Fairies take many forms and are known to impersonate creatures that are very familiar to us, such as cats, dogs, hares, and horses. But sometimes, intentionally or not, we cannot say, they present themselves to us in distorted or weird hybrid forms as bizarre monster creatures and behaving in strange ways. Lady Augusta Gregory was an Irish folklorist. She collected stories of fairy sightings and encounters over a period of 20 years and published her collection in 1920. People in the west of Ireland shared their personal stories and those of their ancestors and neighbours with Lady Gregory about many supernatural subjects, including Seers, Banshees, fairy forts, and bizarre fairy creatures. Her collection is an absolute treasure, and I hope you will enjoy the group of accounts that I've curated regarding bizarre fairy creatures. So come sit down next to me and allow yourself to be transported back 100 years to a simpler time, sitting by a fire or around a kitchen table with a hot pot of tea, just enjoying a chat and some shared stories of fairies. I didn't believe in them myself till one night I was coming home from a wedding, and standing on the road beside me I saw John Kelly's donkey that he always used to call Neddy. So he was standing in my way, and I gave a blow at him and said, "Get out of that, Neddy." And he moved off, only to come across me again and to stop me from going in. And so he did all the way, until as I was going by a bit of the woods, I heard come out of it two of the clearest laughs that ever you heard, and then two sort of shouts. So I knew that it was having fun with me, they were, and that it was not Neddy was there, but his likeness. I was a car driver then and went to serve Paterson at a place between Waterford and Tremor, and there were queer things in that place. There was a room over the stable that I was put to sleep in, and there was no one else near me. One night I felt a great weight on my feet, and there was something very weighty coming up upon my body, and I heard heavy breathing. Every night after that, I used to light the fire and bring up coal and make up the fire with it, that it would be near as good in the morning as it was at night. And I brought a good terrier up every night to sleep with me on that bed. Well, one night the fire was lighting and the moon was shining in at the window, and the terrier leaped off the bed, and he was barking and rushing and fighting and leaping near to the ceiling and in tinder the bed. And I could see the shadow of him on the walls and on the ceiling, and I could see the shadow of another thing that was about 2 foot long and that had a head like a pike, and that was also fighting and leaping. They stopped after a while and all was quiet, but from that night the terrier would never come to sleep in that room again. One night my grandfather was beyond at Inchy, where the lads from Gort used to be stealing rods, and he was sitting by the wall and the dog beside him. and he heard something come running from Inchi, and he could see nothing but the sound of its feet on the ground was like the sound of the feet of deer, he said. And when it passed by him, the dog got in between him and the wall and scratched at him. But still he could see nothing, but only could hear the sound of hooves. So, once it had passed, he turned and went away home. And another time, my grandfather told me, he was in a boat out on the lake here at Cool with 2 or 3 men from Gort, and one of them had an eel spear, and he thrust it into the water and it hit something, and at once the man fainted, and they had to carry him in out of the boat to land. And when he came to himself, he said that what he struck was like a horse or like a calf, but whatever it was no fish. There is a boy I knew by the name of Curtin, and he told me that he was going along the road one night and he saw a dog. It had claws like a cur and a body like a person. It was moaning, he said, like a soul in pain. Then presently it vanished, and there came most beautiful music, and a woman came out, and he thought at first it was the Banshee, and she wearing a red petticoat and a striped jacket she had, and a white band around her waist. And to hear more beautiful singing and music he never did, but to know or to understand what she was expressing, well, he couldn't do it. At last they came to a place by the roadside where there were some bushes, and she went in there and disappeared under them, and the most beautiful lights came shining where she had gone in. And when he got home, he himself fainted, and his mother put her beads over him and blessed him and said prayers. Then he got quiet at last. I would easily believe about a dog having a fight with something that his owner couldn't see. That often happens on this island, and that's why every man likes to have a black dog with him at night. A black one is the best for fighting such things, for they can see what we can't see. There was a man here, was out one night, and the dog ran on and attacked something that was in front of him. A fairy it was, but the man could see nothing. And every now and again it would do the same thing and seem to be fighting something before him. And one night when they got home, the man got safe into the house, but at the threshold, the dog was killed. A horse can see many things, and if ever you're out late and the horse stops as if there was something he wouldn't pass, make the sign of the cross between his ears, and he'll go on then. One night I went with 4 or 5 others down by the mill to hunt rabbits, and when we got to the field by the river, there was the sound of hundreds, some crying and the others laughing, and we all heard them. And something came down to the river. First I thought it was a dog, and then I saw he was too big and strange looking, and you'd think there wouldn't be a drop of water left in the river with all that it drank. And I bid the others to say nothing about what we had seen, for Patrick Green was lying sick at the mill and it might be taken for a bad sign. And so it was. Not many days after we saw this thing at the river, he died. My father told me that one night he was crossing this road and he turned to the wall to close his shoe. And when he turned back again, there was something running through the field that was the size of a yearling calf and black, and it ran across the road, and there was like the sound of chains on it. And when it came to that rock with the bush on it, it stopped, and he could see a red light in its mouth, and then it disappeared. He used often to see a black dog in this road, and it used to be following him, and others saw it too. But one night, the brother of the priest, Father Mitchell, saw it, and he told the priest, and the priest banished it. The lake down there, Loch Graney, is an enchanted place, and old people told me that one time they were swimming there and a man had gone out into the middle and they saw something like a great big eel making for him, and they called out to him, "If ever you were a great swimmer, show us now how you can swim to the shore." For they wouldn't frighten him by saying what was behind it. So he swam to the shore, and he only got there when the thing behind him was in the place where he had been. There are queer things in that lake. I never saw anything myself, but one time I was coming home late from Scariff and I felt my hair standing up on my head, and I began to feel a sort of shy and fearful, and I could feel that there was something walking beside me. This went on for a while until there was a little stream across the road, and after I passed that, I was all right again and I could feel nothing near me. Once, early in the morning, I was going to the May Fair of Lochrie. It was a little way outside of the town. I saw something that had the appearance of a black pig, and it was running in under the cart and under the ass's feet, and the ass would keep backing away from it. It was hardly that I could bring her along till we got to the bridge of Clune. And once we were over that, we saw it no more, for it couldn't pass the running water. And all the time it was with us, I was hitting at it with my stick, and it would run from me then, for it was a hazel stick. And the hazel, you see, is blessed, and no wicked thing can stay when it is touched with it. Well, myself, I once slept in a house with some strange thing. I had my aunt then, Mrs. Leary, living near, and I but a small little girl at the time. And one day she came to our house and asked would I go sleep with her. And I said I would if she'd give me a ride on her back, and so she did. And for many a night after that, she brought me to sleep with her. And my mother used to be asking why, but she'd never give a reason. Well, the cause of her wanting me was this. Every night, so sure as she put the candle out, it would come and lie upon her feet and across her body and near smother her. And she could feel it breathing, but she could see nothing. I never felt anything at all myself, I being sound asleep before she even quenched the light. At last she went to Father Smith, God rest his soul, and he gave her a prayer to say. So the next time she attended Mass, she used it, and that night it was wickeder than ever it had been before. So after that she wrote to her son in America to buy a ticket for her, and she went out to him and there remained some years. And it was only after she came back she told me and my mother what used to happen on those nights, and the reason she wanted me to be beside her. That dog I met in the Boreen was the size of a calf and black, and his paws the size of I don't know what. I was sitting in the house one day and it came in and sat down by the dresser and looked at me. And I did not like the look of him when I saw the big eyes of him and the size of his legs. And just then a man came in that used to make his living by making mats, and he used to lodge with me for a night now and again. A while later he went out to bring his cart away, where he was afraid it had been knocked about by the people going to the big bonfire at the crossroads that night. And when he went out, I looked out the door and there was the dog sitting under his cart. I watched as he made a hit at it with a stick, and it was the stones that the stick struck, and there was the dog sitting at the other side of him. So he came in then and gave me abuse and said I must be a strange woman to have such things about me, and he never would come to lodge with me again. But didn't the dog behave well not to do him an injury after he trying to hit it? It was surely some man that was in that dog, some soul in trouble. One time I was helping Sully, the butcher in Lockree, and I had to go to a country house to bring in a measly pig the people had. So I got there late and had to stop the night, and in the morning at daylight I looked from the window and saw a cow eating the potatoes, so I went downstairs to drive him off. And in the kitchen there was lying by the hearth a dog, a speckled one with spots of black and white and yellow. And when he saw me, he got up and went over to the door and went out through it. And then I saw that the door was shut and locked. So I went and told the people of the house what I saw, and they were frightened and made me stop another night. And that night, as I lay on the bed, the clothes were taken off me and a heavy blow struck me in the chest, and the feel of it was like the feel of ice. So I covered myself up again and put my head under the bedclothes, and I never came to that house again. As to hares, well, there's something queer about them, and there's some that it's dangerous to meddle with, and that can go into any form where they like. One time, when we lived just behind Gort, my father was going to a fair, and it was the custom in those days to set out a great deal earlier than what it is now. So it was not much past midnight when he got up and went out the door, and the moon was still shining bright. And then he saw a hare walk in from the street and turn down by the garden, and another after it, and another, and another, and another, and another till he counted 12. And they all went straight, one after another, and vanished. And my father came back in and shut the door, and he never went out again until it was broad daylight. As to hares, there's no doubt at all there's some that's not natural. One night I was making pot whiskey up in that hill beyond. Yes, indeed, for 3 years I did little but run to and fro to the still. Well, one night I was watching by the fire where it was too fierce and it would have burned the oats, and over the hill and down the path came 2 hares, and they walked on and into the wood, and 2 more after that, and then by 4s they came, and by 6s, and I'd want a slate and a pencil to count all I saw, and it just at sunrise too, and some of them were thin as thin, and I have no doubt at all that those were not hares I saw that night. Hares, they're the biggest fairies of all. Last year, the boys had one caught, and I put it in the pot to wash it after being skinned, and I heard a noise coming from the pot. Grrr, grrr. And there was nothing but the skinned hare and cold water in it. I ran to save my life, and I told the boys to have nothing to do with it, but they wouldn't mind me. And after it boiled and they tried to eat it, they couldn't get their teeth into the flesh of it. And as for the soup, it was no different from potato water. This village has a great name for such things, and it's certain that once, one night every year, in the month of November, all the cats of the whole country gather together here and fight. My own 2 cats were nearly dead for days after it last year, and the neighbours told me the same of theirs. There was a woman here who had a cat, and she would feed it at the table before any other one, and if it did not get the first meat that was cooked, the hair on it would rise up as high as that. Well, one evening there were priests came to dinner, and when they were helped the first, the hair rose up on the cat's back. And one of them said to the woman, it was a queer thing to give in to a cat the way she did, and that it was a foolish thing to be giving it the first of the food. And when it heard that, the cat walked out of the house and never came into it again. There's something not right about cats. Steve Smith says that he knew a keeper that shot one, and it fell into a sort of a heap, and when he came near it, it spoke, and he found that it was some person, and it said to him that it had to walk its 7 acres. And there's some have even heard them together at night talking in Irish. There was a hole over the door of the house that I used to live in, where Murphy's house is now, to let the smoke out, for there was no chimney there. And one day a black cat jumped in at the hole and stopped in the house and never left us for a year. But on the day that marked a year he came, he jumped out again at the same hole over the door, and didn't go out of the door that was standing open. And there was no mistake about it. It was a year to the day.